All right, this is Twisted Christian. This is after the dinar has revalued and you've done your exchange, and now you have to settle your family, your friends, your debts, and you're doing that, right? And I told you guys that if you have over budgeted to help out everybody because you didn't include the taxes that might be coming out, or you thought you were going to have enough, or you get the money in your hands and things have changed. Maybe your financial situation has changed and you have overpromised people. So now you have to go back and think about investing in more currency. I shared that in the last video that if you've overpromised, make sure you put yourself into position so that you can fulfill your promises. Now, one of the things that I want to deal with today is how to give after this has happened. Right? We know the Bible specifically says a lot of things about taking care of the elderly, the widows, orphans, the hungry, the sick. Right? We know that the New Testament pushes that a whole lot. And even what Kim Clement even said. All right, and he said, but God said, I am speaking that I may release resources that will be a grave surrender that will take place in the months to come. I want to free you, every one of you, my people, to be able to stretch out their hand to the lonely, to the hungry, to the poor, and to feed them and clothe them. This is my desire, says the Lord. All right, so we heard the prophetic words on this is supposed to be a part of what we're supposed to do. That's why when you invest in this, dinar, the first thing that we need to make sure is that you're able to invest in the other wells that Kim Clement talks about, right? And let me just bring that up real quick because you're going to need to be careful in your giving off the bat. I have set it, and this is what Kim Clement says. I have set aside certain truths for my people to prosper, and I say to you, it now has begun. They have spoken of the dinar. They have spoken of amazing discoveries, the big E, synchrotron. I have spoken these things that will manifest, but yet there has been a cover upon these things. I say to you, Lord, that I will release them one at a time, because this is the beginning of acceleration. Right? So he's talking about other things. Okay, there are 8 wells that are going to be unstopped in the year 2014. These wells shall bring great provision to the people who are perceptive and who invested. Right? Okay, so there are 8 wells, and he brings up some of those 8 wells. Okay, some of those are gold, some of those are silver. All right, and he also discussed synchrotron and the big E. Let me read that to you. Right? I have set aside certain truths for my people to prosper, and I say to you, now has begun. They have spoken of the dinar. They have spoken of amazing discoveries, the big E, synchrotron. I have spoken these things that they may be manifest, but yet there has been a cover upon these things. I say to you, I will release them one at a time, because this is the beginning of acceleration. So Kim Clement has talked about 8 wells, and it kind of makes me wonder if Bitcoin in the cryptocurrencies was one of those wells. Right? Because around 2014, if you would have invested just a few $1,000s in certain cryptocurrencies, you wouldn't even be thinking about the dinar right now. Right? You'd be living your life. You would have invested. You would have exchanged your cryptocurrencies at a certain time. So it does make me wonder. But we're going to do a video on that, on the 8 wells, and we're going to try to uncover at least most of those 8 wells, and maybe speculation on what some of the other couple wells might be. Right? So when I talk to you now, all right, so done all your exchanging, and you got your computer equipment, you haven't given away a dime yet, right? Because now you have to figure out about settling your family and friends and promises that you've made. Okay, so you're gonna have to deal with that, because some of those people that you've dealt with, your relationship might have gone sour in this time period. But one of the things I definitely want to talk about is, how we're supposed to give. Right? You heard Kim Clement say, feed the hungry, poor, the lonely. Right? We got all those different things. The Bible talks about the widows, taking care of orphans. And I just want to make sure that whatever amount of dinars that you have, that you set aside some to invest in the other wells. That's going to be very important because you don't want to give everything away and then you can't invest anymore. Some of you are going to be starting your own businesses. Be very careful for those who are starting your business and you sink every dollar that you have into your business. Because if it doesn't work, you're really going to be, this is just a warning. If you're starting a business and you have to use most of the money that you've used for the dinar, then it's not time yet to start your business. All right, now, I have my own thing as far as how we're supposed to give. I've been under pastors, I've been under apostles, I've been under prophets, involved in ministry, and I'm talking about being like an armor bearer, right? I've seen a lot of things, I've heard a lot of things, I've heard conversations I probably shouldn't have heard. I've seen a lot of greed, I've seen a lot of focus on money and not ministry, and majority of a lot of these people I served under, just a lot of things just weren't right. And it's all a learning. It's all learning. But we want to make sure that when you give, if you're going to give 10% to your church right now, say this happens and you give 10%, first of all, you need to make sure that it's on good ground. All right, so when we give, when you're considering giving to your ministry, you want to make sure that your ministry is doing these certain things, right? That they are doing those things that they're supposed to do. Now, when you're giving your money, don't go, and some of you are going to go into church and like, oh, my 10% is 300,000 and the pastor better do what I says he's supposed to do with the money, and or you don't want anything like that to cause division and strife because you give. That's why I'm not giving all of my 10% to a church. I don't belong to a specific church right now, but I know that there are ministries that are doing well. They're street preaching and they are feeding people. So when I do give, I'm not going to give everything, all 10% of whatever I have to one ministry. I'm going to spread it out and spread the love, because there are many different things, right? We talk about widows, orphans, elderly people. And there's so many elderly people that are alone because this country, this world treats elderly people like crap. Some of you who your parents gave birth to you and you just stick them into a home because you can't take care of them, but they took care of you. Now, I understand some of your parents may have been abusive and there's a lot of animosity, and I understand that. But there's a lot of you, your parents took care of you when you couldn't take care of yourself. They took care of you. But when they can't take care of themselves, instead of you taking care of them, you put them up in a home, and these nasty homes where these elderly people are dying. And they're dying of loneliness, they're dying of sickness, and they're being abused. I have seen it for myself. There are nursing homes and retirement homes where abuse goes on. And some of this abuse has gone on for years. And yet you won't even go by to visit them or to see them or anything like that. But you can't even call yourself a Christian, because if you can't visit your own parents that you helped put up in there, how are you gonna be a blessing to anybody else? It's very near and dear to me. I have read police reports on abuse in homes. It's always in the media because we don't care. Our government doesn't care. Our politicians don't care. Once they're done with you and they're done collecting taxes off of you, and you start to get sick, they don't want to take. Nobody wants to take care of them. You just want to put them up in a home. Now, I understand that some elderly people do need extra care, and there does come a point in time where you can't do it all, but for God's sakes, do not leave them alone. When my mom was in a nursing home, I was by her side every moment that I could be. And talking to some of the people there are people who have children that only come by to see them once every 3 to 4 months, and they sit there in front of the TV. They sit, and all they have looking forward to is eating. All they have forward looking to is talking to other people who come in to visit other people, or coming to talk to certain workers. So when you guys are giving, Make sure one of the things. See, that's why I'm spreading mine out. I'll be damned if I give all my 10% to a pastor or a ministry and they don't do nothing with it, but take it for themselves, or or start to build a new church and all this other bull crap you hear. Because there are many elderly people that are alone, and if you're not visiting your parents in their retirement home because you can't take care of them or you don't want to take care of them, okay, but just because they can walk, they can talk, they can drive, nah, that's a situation that is near and dear to me because I've seen a lot of it. I've seen a lot of elderly abuse. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and read this. Right, okay, we're talking about sowing your seeds. Okay, we're talking about sowing your 10% or 20% or whatever your blessings, whatever you want to give. And Jesus spoke many things concerning them in parables. Behold, saying, a sower went out forth to sow. And when he sowed, some seeds fell by the wayside, and the fowls came up and devoured them. Some fell in stony places, for which where they had not much earth, and forthwith they sprung up, because they had no depthness of earth. And when the sun was up, they were scorched, because they had no root, and they withered away. And some fell among thorns, and when the thorns sprung up and choked them. But others fell into good ground and brought forth fruit, some 160 and some 30-fold. For who has ears, let him hear. Now we need to apply this to church because some of you have been paying tithes for years and years and years and years and years, and nothing has changed. But is where you're going to church right now, where you're giving right now, is the church is a church prospering and growing? I'm not talking about that it has to get huge and big. Are they making an impact on people's lives, or are you just going to hear a good word and everybody dances and shouts, and you basically going to your Sunday church club, right? It's no different than going to the nightclub if you're going just to dance and shout and scream and holler out and pretend that demons are coming out and everything else. I've seen it all. But is what your ministry doing something? Are they focused on feeding the hungry, preaching the word out? Some of the things that we've discussed, are they really truly doing these things? Not saying they have to do them all, right? Because some ministries are focused on certain things. Some ministries might be focused on taking care of orphans, right? Taking care of children who need to be adopted. So I don't want you guys, when you give, to be any of these seeds that don't bring forth any fruit. And a lot of times when you guys give, you're not going to see it, because when you guys give, you want it to be able to make an impact, right? And I think the biggest thing is, of course, a lot of times is food, right? There's a homeless shelter in our area whereby I live, in my town that I live, and it's in shambles. Right? And we got like hundreds and hundreds of churches. And it's amazing that the biggest homeless shelter that we have here doesn't get very many donations as far as, either fixing it up, food, clothing. A lot of times there are these companies that actually give to these places. It's not churches. It's not churches going to, Walmart and saying, let's take, let's make sure that everybody in this homeless shelter has food for this month. Let's make sure that this homeless shelter is fixed up properly. That it's not that it's livable, right? And having a direct impact. Now, for those of you who have a lot of money and you're giving a lot of money, now one of the things is how do you feel like your money is going to be, holding the church accountable? Right? Because that's where you get into a gray area of, if I give this church $100,000, I want to make sure that they're doing the right thing with it, right? I want to make sure that they're feeding, that they're feeding the poor. Well, of course, in some areas there is food banks that you could go to specifically and sit down and discuss how you want to give and what you want to use for, right? If you don't trust your church, if you don't trust the pastor, if you don't trust the ministry, and you want some type of accountability, that might not be a good thing to give all that to the church to do those things with, because it might cause some problems, right? There are food banks that you can give to, right? And not just around the Thanksgiving time, right? When everybody gives to the food banks and stuff like that. But whatever you do and wherever you give, you want to make sure that it has an impact on somebody's life, right? You just want to make sure that the church you're involved in, or any of the ministries that you're involved in that you're giving to, is having a direct impact on people's lives. Now, also too, you might have a heart to give to somebody individually, right? You want to help somebody that's poor, like, hey man, I'm struggling with my bills, and you want to help somebody. Well, one of the things that I do recommend doing is, okay, well, you have bills to pay, right? Okay, let's bring your power bill, let's bring your phone bill, let's bring your cable bill, let's get all your bills together, and guess what? Let me go ahead and I'll I'm not going to give you the money, but I'm gonna sit here and I'm gonna go to you with these places, or we'll call online, and I will pay all your bills up. I will go to the rental office and write the check to them individually, and catch up your rent. That's how you're gonna have an impact on somebody's life. Because let me tell you something. Somebody who's really behind in their bills, and if you give them the cash, and they think that they could go play the lottery and try to double or triple their money so they can have extra money left over, you'd be surprised what people will do, right? And then they're still in the same situation. So you want to have a direct impact on people's lives. We talked about, some of you can have so much that you'll be able to create ministries where you could actually pay people to have a direct impact in these nursing homes, or have a direct impact on taking care of older people, right? And then you also have the orphans, right? So making sure that that the orphanages in your areas are well taken care of, but also to make sure that these organizations are also accountable. You have to research before you give to any kind of organization. Before you give to any kind of organization, you need to make sure they haven't gotten in trouble recently for financial misconduct. Okay? You want to make sure that you're giving specifically, hey, I want this money to be used for this. I want this money to be used to buy food, right? I want this money to be used, for clothing, right? Some of you might go out your way and help people through college. You can easily set up college scholarships, right? There are some people who are really into sports, and you want, in my town, we have the University of Illinois, and years later, some of these athletes come out and talk about how they starved throughout college, and they had to have their friends and their families buy them meals, which some would even call illegal because of the rules were so tight. Maybe you want to start some type of Christian grant that they know that, hey, this is a Christian organization that's giving me a grant to buy food, so that I can focus, that I don't have to worry about taking money illegally, or have to worry so much about alumni is giving me money and stuff like that. Maybe there are things that you can do. You can start your own grants. You can start your own organizations where you can specifically write out the checks, and you can keep other organizations accountable for the money that you're given. Because if you do grants and you say, okay, well, we need to know, if you want this grant, we need to know how you spend your money now. And then if you want to receive the grant next year, I need to know how you spent the money. And I'm not talking about scholarship grants and stuff like that, or grants for kids in college. I'm talking about like organizations that are, feeding the homeless, or doing whatever, to making sure that they're accountable, because you want to make sure that that the seeds fall into good ground and they bring up fruit 100-fold, 60-fold, and 30-fold. And folks, the last thing I want to see you guys do is to see your pastor pulling up in a brand new Mercedes. Anybody who's money hungry, any leader who's money hungry, they're not going to pull up in that Mercedes right away the moment you give them that money, right? If they're money hungry. If that's what their whole purpose is to show off and show out. Because man, let me tell you something. There's a lot of churches doing that. Because can you imagine? There's over 200 churches in my city. We actually have a tri-city. And if every person who goes to church was to minister the word to one person every week over the next 5 years, everybody in this town would have been preached to, which is amazing, right? Because we have all these churches and they're doing this and they're doing that, they're involved in this and they're involved in that, but yet a lot of people still don't know about Christ, right? So when you're giving, especially if you're a Christian, make sure that when you're giving, that you're sowing in good ground. And don't be pious about it either. Like, oh, well, I just want to make sure, No, that's not the way you do it, right? You don't want to cause any animosity between your church. There's nothing wrong with being a blessing to your pastor or to your leader. But also, too, you don't want them to rely on you for everything. Because now that you've come into money, hey, hey, brother, hey, sister, such and such, we're going to start this new program. Just want to know if you want to, I know you just gave, I know you just got blessed and, you gave us 100,000, for the ministry, but now we want to do some other things and we just want to know if you want to, okay, there it goes, right? You don't want people to become dependent on you to get their ministries going, because that's what's going to happen with a lot of people. So I just want you guys just to make sure in how you give, and I'm really pounding this in. When the dinars first revalue, you need to settle your church and or however you are going to give. I'm not telling you not to give to your church. You really might love your church, but tell me, once people know in your church that you have money, things are going to change. Because some of you are going to show off and try to show out, pull up to church in your Mercedes or in your brand new car, and then you're going to be giving, and because you give, you feel like the pastor owes you something, like the pastor or the leader owes you attention. And there you're going to be causing problems already. And of course now everybody in the church knows that you invested in dinars and you have a lot of money. So you're going to have people within the church asking you, begging you, coming by your house and place and all kind of other crazy stuff. Right? That's why we don't judge people, man, because we judge a lot of people based off of how they look or what they're involved in, but you don't know that within 5 years that person, there's a lot of political stuff going on with LGBT and other stuff. You don't know if that person is going to be saved 5 years from now, right? But you don't know how to plant the seed in that particular person or individual. So when that seed grows within that 5 years, all you do is show hate. You don't show no love at all whatsoever. And you don't even know. Sometimes we judge people based off of other things, and we just don't know where their life is going to be. Look how many people that were involved in criminal activity, 5, 10, 15 years ago, and they love the Lord and they serve the Lord. But when you met them beforehand, or when you seen them on the street, you judged them, you cursed them, but yet you didn't see where they were going to be at 5 and 10, 15 years from now. That's why it's important how we plant our seeds. I want you guys to be able to make an impact on people's lives. Make an impact on people's lives. That doesn't mean you have to go out and buy people cars and do. Some of you might have like so much that you're going to have more than enough to deal with, but you need to be careful. You need to be careful, especially in the ministry, because once people find out in the church, you might be a single man or a single woman, and you're going to have everybody coming after you, even the married folks, right? And don't be a married man or married woman in the church and they know you come into money. Especially if you're a man, you're going to have all these little single ladies, wishing that they were in that position of being the wife, right? So that's why you got to make sure that your guys' relationship, you're within a church, that any signs that things start to fall apart, you might have to leave. So this is what I mean by settling your church. There's a lot of things I've discussed, a lot of different scenarios that I've discussed. I just want to make sure that when you guys give, that you guys give to make an impact. Just don't give to, Cancer Treatment Centers of America, or whatever they call it. You give them you give them $100,000, and they don't do nothing with it, but go and pay payroll with it. They're not having an impact on people's lives. Because there are some people that when my son was sick in the hospital, when he had cancer, when he had leukemia, and we were in the hospital, there are people who could not afford to come off their job and stay next to their son or to their daughter in the children's hospital. And they had to rely on grants. They had to rely on family members giving them money so they could stay there and be with their son or daughter, because they didn't know. Just because your child is going through treatment, you don't know when that day is going to come. So that they could be by their side and be able to look at alternatives and be able to seek alternatives. See, these are a lot of these things I look at, right? There's going to be a lot of, there's a lot of things that I would like to do. I'm not making promises to do, but there's a lot of things that I would like to do in the long term because I've experienced some of those things and I've seen some of those things, right? How many people, let me just ask you this. The leadership at your church, how often do they visit the hospital praying over people, the sick? How often? How often does your leadership talk about doing something, raising funds for the poor, or for the hungry, raising food to give away? How often does leadership encourage you, or even have some type of ministry that goes out and talks to people? Then the guys say it's got to be every day. But how often, when there's a major event down like the Taste of Chicago or doing certain things, hey, let's go out and preach the word. Let's go out and talk to people about church and Jesus. How often? See, some of you that's going to hurt, because a lot of you will realize all you do is go to church for entertainment. You might learn something here and there, but I know some of you are tired of hearing the same thing over and over again and nothing changes. So again, what Kim Clement said about taking care of the lonely, the hungry. I want you guys that when you give, just make sure that you are just having an impact in whatever you give in. Whether it's to a ministry or to an organization that's going to directly have an impact in your community. You hear about all these donations to, billions of dollars they collect every year. I rarely hear about anybody benefiting from the super wealthy giving. They're always giving to universities. They're always, giving to these organizations that are supposed to be helping people, their education and all this other stuff. I don't really know anybody who has really taken advantage of a lot of these programs that you hear about. All these billionaires and millionaires giving all this money away, and there's no impact on any community at all whatsoever. And if you have not told your pastor or your leadership about the dinar, you haven't showed them the prophecies, you haven't showed them step by step, hey, this is, the whole financial system has changed, okay? At least let them know, because guess what? For every person, every family member that I have thought about giving to, or any ministry that I've thought about giving to, if they know about the dinar, that's less pressure off of me. So you guys just need to be careful too how you give to your family members, right? Don't let them become dependent on you. Don't let them become your ATM, right? And then you want to make sure that you just don't give just to be giving. You want to be you want your children and you want your family members to have nice things. Your parents may have taken care of you and you want to take care of them, but don't let them become dependent on that. All right, make sure that they know about the dinar and that they can put their own investment into it as well. So then that way people won't have to rely on you as much. And as far as your friends, be careful how you give to your friends. Don't let them, they'll be making all kind of lies and excuses. Man, I'm in this big financial trouble, man. I need like $10,000, right? Right? And you got it. You got plenty of it, but you don't know that he's not telling the truth. He just knows that he missed out on the investment, and he's just trying to get some of your investment so he can do what he wants to do. Right? That's why it's important that if you're going to pay somebody's bills, if I'm going to take the time out to tell somebody I'm going to bless them, right? and that I'm going to catch them all up on their bills, and I'll be the one to drop off the check. It seems like a lot of work, but you know what? You're going to have more of a direct impact if you're involved in that person's life for that short period of time, right? And once you're done, you paid all their bills, they're caught up, they're working, they just came into some issues, and you're helping them. Not everybody that has issues got into debt because of bad financial decisions, right? Some people came into debt because of medical issues, or some people I know, including myself, came into problems because their children had cancer or leukemia. So I know, right? And then you don't realize that, a lot of people, they have problems because they're dealing with deaths, they're dealing with certain things, and people get depressed. They get hooked on drugs or alcohol, and they get so depressed they don't care about nothing. And now, after they've woken up, and God is trying to get them back on the right track, and now you've realized you've left a mess behind, and now you're trying to get yourself back together. That was the position that I was in. I didn't care about anything. For a good 4 to 5 years, I didn't care about anything. I didn't care about paying my taxes. I didn't care about nothing, about nobody. I was mad at God. I was very upset with God. And so I left the trailblaze of craziness, broken relationships, broken finances, a lot of things. And to some degree, I still suffer for some of those decisions that I made after my son had passed away. Don't judge every book by its cover. Make sure you at least try to read a few chapters and learn to discern when somebody's not telling the truth when they're asking you for money, right? That's going to be a big thing. People are going to be asking you for money, and they're not going to be telling the truth. They just want it for whatever. They're not trying to build a business. They're not trying to do anything with it. And you're going to have people ask you for money to invest in their businesses and so forth. And they're not going to ask you lightly either. No, they're not asking you for $5 or $10. They're not asking you to sign up for Patreon. They're asking you for $10,000 and $20,000. So you need to learn to discern too as well. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this. I hope you have learned something about giving and how to give in this thing. And I think the number one thing, and I'm gonna read it. I'm gonna say this because it's at the end of this video, is that without Kim Clement's ministry, the House of Destiny, without them and Kim Clement's perseverance and his family suffering through everything they've been through, we would not know where we were at with this dinar. Many of us would not know with this dinar thing. Many of us are not going to know about the wells that we're going to be discussing here in the future. We're not going to know about these future investments. That's when this takes place. The House of Destiny and Kim Clement's ministry, they should really have a lot. That ministry should be almost $1 billion ministry after the revaluation of the dinar. So, and they do a lot of good things with their ministry. They take care of a lot of children. They take care of kids. And it's very, very important that you take care. It's very important that you take care of this ministry. And I tell you one thing. Kim Clement had a lot of good teachings. Praise and worship was awesome. And I surely miss Kim Clement and everything that was taking place when he was here. So I just want to say that make sure that you guys do not forget the ministry of Kim Clement when this all takes place. And I will, when this whole revaluation takes place, and any of you who have benefited from the wells that he's discussed, make sure that you do give to that ministry. Twist Your Christian out.